Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Cookiecast. And today's episode is the first podcast special. Ooh. I sat down with Lianne Davies to do a special podcast. So the subject of the special podcast is horror movies. Ooh, spooky. What's also special about today's podcast is it's going to be the first time we're going to hear what could become the Cookiecast theme tune. Ooh. A friend of mine, Pete, who's been on a podcast that's yet to be heard, he said that there is a website where a guy does royalty-free music as long as you sort of quote his name as being, so he gets the credit for it. I'm not entirely sure how to do that, so I'm going to put it in the notes on the uploads and stuff, so the name's there so that people can see who it is that I got the music from. And I will certainly try to quote the person that did the music. But it's apparently free on the internet, which is a really cool thing. And so there's that. So today is a special podcast. Like I said, it's about horror movies. Lianne takes us on a journey through the horror movie genre. This is the first of the special podcasts. There are other specials coming up further down the line. And then Lianne gives us a rundown of her top 3 horror movies. And then I'm quite scathing about them. I'm not sure how that went. You sort of have to see how you feel about it, see if I was too harsh on what she thought. The theme tune is it seems to be by a person called Kevin MacLeod. And there is a website for that I think I'll put in the notes on the upload. So enjoy the first Cookiecast podcast special and enjoy what could become the Cookiecast theme music. So enjoy. Right, podcast time. Let's do this.
Are we on?
We're on.
Have we started?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm Lianne Davies, and welcome to Cookiecast.
Wow, that's new. That's interesting. That reminds me, I need to write some ground rules for the podcast guests for the future. But I'll do that later. So today on Cookiecast, we're going to do a special podcast episode.
A special?
A special.
Why is it special? Because I'm here. That's
one reason. I think that's a different kind of special, isn't it?
Wow.
So we're doing, rather than doing our usual fun-loving podcast format, we're doing a special podcast today, which is what should we call it? A genre podcast.
Yep.
I was going to call it Lianne in the Movies.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's go with something like that. So, you and I have been having a conversation recently about how you can really inject yourself into the podcast more. And I was saying to just, you just got to take it steady, you got to take it easy. I was like, why don't you pick one subject and talk about that one subject? And we were sort of talking about what that subject could be, and we said, well, maybe we could do genres of films.
Yes.
And I said, so we'll take what's probably your favourite genre of film, and we'll start there, because at least, you can talk about it because it's your favourite genre and that sort of thing. So, what is the genre of film we're going to talk about today.
The genre of choice for today is horror.
So we're going to discuss
Shock horror.
the horror movie genre.
Yes.
So the idea was that we would try and name your top 3 horror movies.
Yes.
However, we have had several conversations about this up to this point, and I think what we're going to actually end up doing is trying to truly define the horror movie genre. We're going to go on a journey, you and I,
a conversational
to the
journey.
centre of what is the horror movie genre.
Yep.
So, I was gonna tell you a story that I'm not sure if you know.
Okay.
So my story is about me and horror movies.
Yep.
Do you know this story?
I don't know that I know this story. I know that you're not the biggest fan of horror movies.
That's not. It's not 100% true. There's some horror movies I like.
You don't like being scared.
I don't like being scared. I don't like jump horror movies. Those ones I don't like.
Because you jump very easily.
Because I jump very easily because I'm always worried about what might be happening. And then I jump at the wrong time and I look like an idiot. And that's why I don't like it.
Yeah.
So that's that. So I'm going to tell you a story. So, when I was very young, I remember my father putting a film on. I don't know what the film was called. And I don't know what it was about, but it was a horror movie that it was, I don't know. It was just this horror movie, which if you think about, I'll have been really young, like 6 or 7 or something, to put a horror movie on, showing it to a child. He didn't put the whole thing on, he just put this like bit on, and we were all there. And my mum was going mental that he was putting this horror film on, and he was like, no, it's fine. And I remember these 2 guys were sat in the front of a car and they were pulling faces at each other. And one was like, stick his fingers up his nose, and one was like, stick his fingers in his eyes and pull his eyes about and stick his fingers in. And you know the one where you do like...
Beetlejuice?
No. You know the one where you put like your fingers in the corners of your mouth and then you put fingers up your nose and then you pull your eyes and that sort of stuff. And they were just trying to like beat each other in... So who could pull the best face? And then at one point, one of the guys just tore the skin off his face to reveal like this, like his face, but with no skin on. And it was like, and that was like my first sort of impression of horror films, and it was scary. And then there was the video for Thriller.
Okay.
Michael Jackson Thriller. That used to terrify me.
Yep.
So I had this whole thing as a child that I believed I was terrified of horror movies, and I wouldn't watch anything that had even the suggestion that it might be scary. And then when I was about 12 years old, a friend of mine was like, "Oh, should we watch a film?" And there was like a few of us, and I was like, "Yeah, what should we watch?" And he was like, "Oh, I've got Gremlins. Should we watch Gremlins?" And I was like, and straight away I was like, "Oh, that sounds like a horror movie." And I was like, I had to sort of try and ask, sort of surreptitiously, was it scary? And he was like, "Scary?" And I was like, "Yeah, isn't that a horror film?" And he's like, "No, it's just." And I was like, "Are you sure?" And I kept asking. And then we watched it, and it wasn't scary. I think I had a bit of like, at one point,
You were scared when he got water on him and his back all started bubbling.
I was just this perpetual fear that something was going to jump out at me. And then I think round about the same sort of time, a bit later, there was the Stephen King TV movie of It. And that terrified me as a child. The bit with the werewolf in the house, because I was afraid of werewolves anyway. So the bit with the werewolf and they're trapped in the house and the werewolf's going to get them and stuff, and that just terrified. I couldn't, that film, that whole thing, because it's not like a film, it's like a 2-part TV movie thing. That was just terrifying to me. So that was my experience. I believed horror films were the scariest thing in the world, and you shouldn't watch them because they were terrifying and they'd make you jump and they'd make you scared and you wouldn't be able to sleep because you'd have horrible nightmares. That was my take on horror films.
Yeah.
And I just didn't watch them. So I missed all of the classic horror, because I grew up without watching it. And then, very early on in our relationship, you were telling me that you were really into horror movies, and straight away I was like, oh no. And then you were like, oh, do you want to watch a film? And I'm like, what is it? And you're like, watch a horror film. And I'm like, oh no. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. That sounds like a really good idea. And I was proper like trying to macho it up whilst being terrified that I was going to have to sit and watch a horror film whilst being super scared. And then it'd make me jump and I'd look like an idiot. So you decided that we were going to watch Candyman. And I was like, oh God, I know the name. I've obviously never seen it. And I was just like, oh man, I'm so terrified. I'm so scared. And I'm going to look like an idiot in front of you and all of this. So we sat at your mum's house and we sat down to watch Candyman, and you put it on. And I was just so rigid, like stiff, rigid with fear that I was going to be terrified of this film. And then the film went on, and I'm just waiting for the big scary thing, the horror aspect of the horror movie to happen. And then the film finished.
I think probably the scariest part in Candyman is the point at which you're waiting for them to say Candyman, like 3 times for them to suddenly appear like somewhere.
But there was like 4 or 5 like where Candyman turns up. I think we might have said the name 3 times. Is he going to come and get us?
We didn't say in quick succession.
Oh, that's right, yeah. So
or looking in the mirror.
There was like 4 or 5 times in the film where Candyman turns up, and then I was just like, I was stiff as a board and just waiting, and then what happened wasn't scary, wasn't terrifying, I was just like, is this it? Is this what horror movie, what I've been afraid of all this time? The possibility of something that was, to me, at that point, so tame that I couldn't believe it. And from that point on, I was like, oh. And then I just started watching all the horror movies that I'd missed, and I started watching the horror movies that I liked. Even at that point, I was quite a big fan of American Werewolf in London, because I never viewed it to be a horror movie.
Yep.
Even though, looking back, there are some scenes in that film that are quite intense and quite horror movie. So that was my take on horror films.
Yep.
So I was going to tell you the story of horror movies.
Yep.
But you've been quite excited to do this. I've noticed that you've been looking forward to doing this, and you've been quite excited by the prospect of getting your teeth into... Because I said that you should do some research, and then apparently you went away and did some research. And I've written no show notes for this episode.
And not research as such, but I just wanted to try and gather some thoughts in advance and make sure a few specific movies came up along the route of the conversation.
Okay, so you tell me what it is we're doing here. We're gonna try and name your 3 favourite horror movies.
Yep.
But we're gonna go through the journey of how you got to those.
No, not particularly. Just I think there are some sort of not necessarily genres, but some points to cover along the way.
Because I will admit, you've gone, this is a film that's on my list, and I've gone, that's not a horror movie.
Yes, and that's part of...
And you've been like, but it is a horror movie. And I'm like, no, it's, this genre or that genre. I don't want to say anything because you might still be wanting to say that. But there's been points where I've been like, but that's not a horror movie, that's a thriller, or that's a vampire movie. And you were like, well, is there such a thing as a vampire genre? I was like, yeah, vampire movies. And
I'm not saying that there isn't a vampire genre, because a vampire movie lots of vampire movies would fall into vampire genre. But are there vampire movies that aren't horror movies? No, sorry, I said that wrong. There are vampire movies that aren't horror movies. Like Twilight, for example.
But I don't think a vampire film... I personally don't think of a vampire film as a horror film.
See, my argument to you was Hammer House of Horrors.
Yeah, so we had a brief conversation about
The
Hammer
original
horror.
classic horror movies were Dracula,
But which version of Dracula?
whatever, like the 1930s one, whatever falls into the
Right, okay.
Hammer.
Yeah.
The werewolf movie from that era, the Lon Chaney.
So would that be the Wolfman?
Is that what it was?
I'm not sure.
Yeah. I'm not saying I'm an expert on these, but this is why I thought that they would be considered horror. And then the like Frankenstein from that era.
Frankenstein, The Mummy is also Hammer horror.
Yep.
But again, the original Mummy, certainly not the Tom Cruise version, and I don't believe the Brendan Fraser version
Don't fall
qualifies
into
as Hammer horror.
No. So that was my argument for a vampire movie being a horror.
Right, so where does Interview with a Vampire fall? That's not a horror movie.
I have seen that movie. I don't think it was high. I think I was misled probably by a title because I like vampire movies and then found that it wasn't. I couldn't tell you what it was about.
Wow. See, I'm not sure if that's one of my guilty pleasures or not, but I really like Interview with a Vampire. I wasn't as keen on the sequel.
What was that called?
Oh, now you're asking.
Calling you back for a second interview with the vampire.
No, it was whatever, because the book was the Vampire Lestat.
Okay, I'm not.
Someone that had, what's his, Townsend in.
Pete Townsend.
No, definitely not. And Jonathan Davis did the soundtrack.
Oh, really?
Something of the Damned. Queen of the Damned.
Oh, right.
There we go. That's the sequel to
Really?
Interview with a Vampire.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Wow. So, in my opinion, I don't think a vampire movie is a horror movie, but I did agree that an original Dracula film can be a Hammer horror film.
So you would say that the Dracula film, the Keanu Reeves,
Gary Oldman.
Gary Oldman, can't remember his name, so I went for Keanu Reeves. Winona Ryder Dracula movie is not a horror.
I wouldn't consider that to be a horror film. That's a vampire movie.
A vampire movie? No, that doesn't get its own.
Vampire movies a genre.
It's not.
It is.
Okay, we'll agree to differ on that. But
well, I could now start just go. Right. Okay. So what is 40 Days a Night?
That is a horror.
It's a vampire movie.
Well, it is a vampire movie, but I've never considered vampire movies as a genre. It's a subset of horror movies.
What about that one that's got Sam Neill and Ethan Hawke? Whatever that was called. Daylight, is that?
Yeah. It's a horror movie.
But I don't even think that's got like any horror aspects in it. That's about vampires trying to
survive.
Yeah.
I Am Legend.
Is that a vampire film?
Yeah.
I've never seen it.
Haven't you?
No.
Yeah.
One of those films that just I've never seen.
Yeah, they're essentially vampires. It's a horror. But it's also like a survival. What do you call those types of movies where there's like a handful of people trying to survive?
Survival movie.
Yeah, them survival movie. That's would you say it was a vampire movie or is it a survival movie? Or is it just a horror?
I mean, this is the question that I think we're going to have to try and answer by the end of it. What is a horror movie?
I don't think we can answer that question because everybody's view
we can't agree.
will differ.
Right, okay.
Because a lot of what I considered horror were like, I said to you, is a psychological thriller a horror? And your answer was, no, a psychological thriller is a psychological thriller.
Yeah.
But it induces fear.
So did you have the description? Because you had to Google it.
I looked it up, didn't I?
Did you have you got the description to hand?
I can find it again. Because it's like I was asking you, is it something that it has to be gory to be considered horror? Does somebody have to die? Do you just have to be scared? What? How do you define a horror movie?
How do I define it?
Well,
I don't know. I would just go, that's a horror film.
but why?
Because, all right, I'll give you an example. Hellraiser.
Yeah.
Horror movie.
Yeah.
Because what else would you refer to it as? It's a horror film. You could say it's quite a gore fest. There's a lot of blood and viscera.
And people dying.
But to me, hands down, it's a horror film.
Okay, and what... Yeah, I agree with that. You're saying it's a horror film?
Yeah.
Because...
Horror movie.
It's got a clown in, and that's quite horrific.
I've never had the issue with clowns though, so it's not that for me. It's
really pointy teeth, and the fact that he steals children.
I mean, it's just there are just certain films where you go, that's a horror film. It's a horror movie
because it's scary if it was to happen in real life.
Maybe that's it. Maybe there has to be an element of realism,
or not
Nightmare
realism, but if
Nightmare on Elm Street, horror movie.
Because
it's reality and everybody dreams and everybody has nightmares.
Yep.
No? You know?
What about... This was one that was on my list just to bring up when we were considering a horror movie. Alien.
So... There is an argument that the original Alien is a horror film. There's an argument that it's a psychological thriller. If you think back, you never actually see, other than the alien bursting out of John Hurt's chest, you never actually see all that much blood and gore and horror.
Death.
It's a
death
jumpy...
is associated with that film, though.
Yeah.
Although you don't necessarily see it as gory.
Right. Do you have the description of what a horror movie is? If you have, read it to us.
Horror films are unsettling films. Unsettling. Sorry, let me just read it out loud before I start commenting on it. Horror films are unsettling films designed to frighten and panic, cause dread and alarm, and to invoke our hidden worst fears, often in a terrifying, shocking finale, while captivating and entertaining us at the same time in a cathartic experience.
Right. So, by that, I'm going to throw a curveball now.
Okay.
Serenity.
Serenity is not a horror film.
It isn't. But by that description, if you think, right, spoilers.
Yeah, we have to be quite careful.
Yeah. If you think about the end of that film, does the end of that film fit that description? Or the bit before the end of that film?
Yeah.
Yeah. So then you could argue that part of Serenity is part horror. Yeah. Think about that.
It just... there's too many blurred lines.
There is.
You wouldn't sit and watch Serenity, though, and
with a pillow up to your face.
No, and
I do it so far through it.
Yeah.
No, I literally sit going, no.
Why would you do that?
And that fits that description, I'm afraid.
But you just know that that's not a horror film.
It isn't a horror film. Anyway, we're getting bogged down here. So we've now... Do you want to read the description again? Or do you think we've covered it? Read it again and then start us off. Because you're in the driving seat on this one.
Horror films are unsettling films designed to frighten and panic, cause dread and alarm, and to invoke our hidden worst fears, often in a terrifying, shocking finale. I mean, that's a bit of a... I wouldn't say a horror film necessarily has that. It doesn't have to have a shocking finale. But if it's frightened you along the way, caused panic, you've wanted to cover your eyes, or you're at risk of jumping, that's a horror film.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So, like I say, you're in charge, so take us on the journey to the top 3 horror movies, in your opinion. Your top 3 horror movies.
Okay, so a genre I wanted to cover of horror movies are those that involve ghosts. Because for me...
Okay.
What?
I'm wondering if there's going to be like a Patrick Swayze, Whoopi Goldberg conversation coming up.
There will not be, because I have never seen Ghost.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's one thing fine.
So I like horror films that are centred around ghostly goings-on.
Okay.
Because for me, there is an element of that is truly terrifying, because I don't know whether to believe in ghosts or not.
Okay.
I neither do believe or don't believe. So stuff like that creeps me out. Like especially in like old films set in old houses and things where it'll just be panning across the corridor and you don't know whether something's going to jump out on you at any given moment.
3 Men and a Baby.
Yes, that. Oh my God, that should be my top horror film, because that, after I was told about that stayed with me forever, and I can't watch that now.
Yeah?
Yeah. And that camera pans past that, like, centre column in that big open plan living room. Yeah. And there was that ghost there. Oh, it's giving me the creeps just thinking about it. Ow. In fact, I think I've just pulled a muscle in my neck. Anyway, so classic example to mention there is Poltergeist.
Okay.
The original, not the remake.
You are just mentioning this, you're not...
This is not a favourite film, no.
Okay, right.
It was, it's just a classic that is worthy of a mention on the route to top 3.
Okay. Because it's ghosts.
Because it's got ghosts in. Another one that I've not seen in a very long time, but I seem to recall being very enjoyable, was 13 Ghosts.
Okay.
Which I probably shouldn't have even mentioned because I can't think what it was about. Apart from like some ghosts were on like lockdown somewhere, and they'd been escaping.
How many ghosts were there?
I'm pretty sure there was 5. There might have been 13.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So not just a clever name then.
No, it was relevant.
Wonderful. Poltergeist, good start.
Yes. Another with a creepy little clown thing.
Yeah.
Did I want to say anything else about that?
You got any other ghosty stories?
Have I got any ghost stories?
No, I don't want any ghost stories. I mean, is that just one film that you're mentioning because it's got ghosts?
Poltergeist?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, next.
The next subgenre that needs touching on is Japanese horror films.
Now
because Japanese do it best.
Oh, this is where things get really sketchy, because I have... I think I was talking to you the other day. I was like, I'm not sure I have a top 3, but there are certainly... I can name 2 films that have properly terrified me. And one of those is a Japanese horror movie.
Yep.
So go on. Talk us through the Japanese horror genre.
So, I think the one that you're referring to is The Ring. Was that the first...
Oh, God.
Was that the first Japanese movie we'd watched?
I don't know. Did we watch Audition before The Ring?
Because Audition is on the list underneath my Japanese heading to mention. Because part of me wondered, was that a horror film?
That definitely blurs the line, because that's psychological thriller.
Yep.
With, I think, going back to your description of what makes horror movie, I think that probably does fall into the... Again, I'm not going to say much about it, but spoiler alert if you haven't seen the film Audition. The whole scene at the end, I can't remember, is terrifying. Because of the fact, and again, I'm going to say it again, spoiler alert, the fact that he is paralysed, so has to witness everything that's going on.
I mean, the premise
That
of the
is the
movie
terrifying
is so
aspect.
sort of the way it starts out to the way it ends.
Yeah, it's a terrifying.
It's just
terrifying
polar
film.
opposites. And I don't know. Was there a remake?
I don't know. I don't know if it was there was a rumour of a remake. I certainly haven't seen one. So
Okay. I didn't know if I felt like we had. It is well worthy of a watch for anyone that wants to.
yeah, if you like your psychological thrillers or stroke horror movies, Audition has got to be up there as pretty much a must watch.
Yeah.
Although it is terrifying.
So we may have watched that before.
I think we watched Audition first.
And then we went on to watch The Ring.
And then we watched The Ring. Oh, God, that was terrifying.
How did we find out about these movies? Well, obviously they were in Japanese, so...
It was somebody I used to work with was introducing all these films to us.
Yeah, okay. So then The Ring. And that... I also remember that being truly terrifying.
So, not wanting to spoil anything for
Yeah.
anybody, but The Ring is my number one horror movie. As just terrifying film. I don't think I've ever, other than my number two horror film, I don't think I've ever come close to a feeling of being that scared.
No, you
and
see, yeah.
what is always a thing about The Ring is that film's a 15
Yeah.
and nothing happens in it.
What do you mean?
Spoiler alert. Nothing. There's no horror. There's nothing. It's just somebody telling you a story for an hour and a half about the possibility of something that could be scary.
Yeah.
And you never see anything. You just see the result of whatever that is. Spoilers again. However, I think it works out. It's something like the last 7 minutes of that film is the most terrifying experience I've ever had.
And it's enough to make you fear what is shown in the movie actually happening
I
in
just
real
remember
life.
saying to you with my hand over my face, I'm going to have to turn it off. I have to turn it off. I'm going to have to press stop. And just like one hand over my face, one hand holding the remote and just gripping it like I thought it was going to break and looking away from the TV. So I wasn't even looking at the TV. I was looking at you going, I'm going to have to turn it off. I need to press stop.
Has it stopped
I've
yet?
got to press stop. I'm going to have to turn it off. I can't do it. I can't watch any more of this because it was terrifying. That film is a masterpiece because it's a 15. You don't see anything until the end, and then what they show you at the end is just beyond scary.
This was something else that I feel like I needed to touch on, is because you were saying that is your number one horror film.
Number one with a bullet.
Now,
Straight in there, no questions.
I would say that can't possibly be my number one because I'm not even sure I could bring myself to watch that again.
Ugh.
So that can't make it my favourite film.
I've seen it twice, I think.
I think I have seen it twice. But a favourite film has to have an element of enjoyment. And whilst I recognise that as being a good horror film, it is not one that you enjoy watching. So it's that not only are we trying to ascertain...
It's enjoyable up to the end.
Not only are we trying to work out how to define a horror movie, but how do you define what your favourite horror movie is? Is it one that literally scares the crap out of you so much that you don't want to watch it again?
Because I would say... I can't name a top 3 because I would struggle with number 3 because I would probably have to go a top 5,
Mm-hmm.
The Ring being number 1. Number 2 is another film that is, to me, was terrifying. And then after that, it's films that don't scare me, but I love.
Mm-hmm.
So American Werewolf in London has to be up there because I love that film so much, but I'm not scared by it.
Yep.
Hellraiser. I really like Hellraiser. I think the characters, like the Cenobites and stuff, they're great horror characters. But it doesn't scare me as a film.
No. No. Not even the guy with all the CDs in his head. Does he not scare?
Yeah.
I think he was in like the third one or something.
Yeah, by the third one, I tuned
They were
out.
just. I think they were just making up
Yeah,
Cenobites.
they were just flinging the poo by the third one, and I'm pretty sure there's like 9 Hellraiser films.
What? I thought it stopped at 3.
No, I'm sure there's like, I think it just went on forever.
Awesome.
They're probably making one right now. Anyway, go on, give us some more of your Japanese horror.
So a couple of other Japanese ones to mention. I've got 2. So The Grudge.
Yeah.
I think that potentially scared me more than The Ring.
Whereas it didn't for me.
See, I was watching that on my own originally, or I was trying to, and I had to switch it off because I just didn't like it. I couldn't brace myself to be on my own to watch it. Not just on my own in a room watching it, but on my own in the house. And I think it got to like about 3 minutes in and I switched it off. And then I had to try and re-watch it at another point. And now, I don't know what it is about them, if it's because the remakes, the American remakes.
I was waiting for you to get to a point where I could say, look, something we need to address here is American remakes of Japanese horror films. They should just not bother.
They don't,
because they just cannot do it.
I've watched a number of the remakes, The Ring, The Grudge, and I've sat through them and I've enjoyed them as far as a horror film goes. But they just do not have the same atmospherics.
They can't do it the way the Japanese
as the Japanese.
There was that Dark Water as well.
Yes, yeah.
There was like Jennifer Connelly was in the remake of that, I seem to remember.
She was.
And the premise of the film was different in the American remake, and it just, again, didn't work quite as well.
They don't.
The American remakes generally tried to do we really liked that Japanese horror film, but we didn't like that aspect, so we'll correct it. It's like,
and then they lose. Yeah, it loses something. And I always wonder if it's to do with the subtitles, like the fact that you're having to read something.
You have to really concentrate
at the same time as watching it. I don't know, that adds another element to it. So yeah, The Grudge. That was one that stayed with me. As I say, I had to switch it off, but it's up there as a scare fest.
Okay.
The other one I wanted to mention in that category, I'm not sure if you watched it, but it was called Shutter, I think.
I can't say I've seen that.
And that was to do with a photographer. I think they were living in an apartment or something that they thought was haunted. So he kept trying to capture this ghost on camera. But as the film progressed, he started to have some physical ailments as well. Like the guy that was taking the pictures, he started to get a really bad back. And he was becoming more hunched over.
Had the ghost gone through the camera?
No. No. I can't actually tell you what happened because I don't want to spoil it for anybody. But that is another one that really scared me at the end, and it caught me out as well. I always take films at face value, and I'm not like you, and I don't see what's coming next. So when there's suddenly a twist at the end, it usually kind of hits me hard. Whereas you might see things coming.
Yeah, sometimes, but not always.
But I just think there's...
I only worked The Sixth Sense out like moments before it told you the answer.
I'd never seen that, so that was one of those that I already knew. The spoiler before I ever watched it. I don't think I've ever actually watched that through since then because it was already ruined.
Yeah, I suppose something like that, you do need that twist element.
Because otherwise
you're just watching a film.
You've lost the premise of the film, yeah.
A vague horror movie in that one.
Yeah. Okay, so that sort of covered that category.
Okay.
I think.
Still haven't worked our way to number 3.
Number 3 what?
Out of top 3.
No, that comes at the end.
Right, okay. I'm just,
We're just weaving our way through.
Yeah.
So the Hammer Horror, we've already sort of spoken about whether that should be included. And we touched on the Dracula film.
Mm-hmm.
That is definitely up there for me, Dracula.
But not the Hammer horror one.
No, the Gary Oldman.
Keanu. Whoa.
Is that your impression for the evening?
I'm waiting to do my impression. I've been storing this bad boy up.
You're saving it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm still interested to see what your horror movie impression is going to be.
I'm not sure if I actually found one in the end.
Boo.
So another Dracula or a vampire movie that I wanted to mention is Shadow of the Vampire. Is it a horror movie? Or is it
It's
is it a comedy?
It is not a horror movie. It is hands down a comedy.
I was just thinking because like the original Nosferatu would have been considered a horror
movie
of its time. So that was
great movie though.
It's
brilliant film.
It's one of those. It's like someone had an idea. Oh, I want to make a vampire movie, but everyone's kind of done that. So what can I do to make it different?
Yeah.
And I was, yeah. So
anytime you put Eddie Izzard into a film, you can have a good time. And I just love the fact that freaking spoilers. By the end, there's not many people left.
We should probably allow for spoilers, but there should just be a disclaimer on the start. It's like, do not listen to this if you ever want to watch a movie in the future.
Luke said that we should do a pre-recorded message. Like the opener for the episode should be, please note there are spoilers for certain things in this. If you hear us talking about something you haven't seen, you probably want to fast forward through it.
Yeah.
And that way we don't have to just say spoilers every 13 seconds.
Yeah, and not actually go through the points that we want to cover.
Because we do need to talk about some of the stuff.
Yeah, because otherwise it's like, there was a film and
something happened.
Some scary stuff happened. Yeah. Look for it. Okay.
Okay.
I also wanted to touch on Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Okay.
Because that is also up there for me. Not in the top 3. This would be, say, I was listing a top 20 horror films. I think this is where these ones would fit in.
Right.
That is... Is it a classic? I suppose it is, when you think about how old it probably is as well. Yeah. It's not scary as such. Mm. And in a lot of respects, it's actually quite sad, almost.
Yeah.
When the monster's sort of like out there on his own and trying to make friends and things. But it is, absolutely a classic. And I'd written Wolf on my list, but you've already touched on like American Werewolf and...
Do you mean
Wolfman?
Wolf, as in the Jack Nicholson film?
Oh no, I was just sort of covering...
Are you talking about werewolf movies?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yes, that is a good movie actually.
Wolf's a good film.
I think I've got that film.
I think you have.
Yeah.
Good little movie.
It is, yeah. That is... not scary.
No.
I wouldn't even... I'm going to contradict myself now saying... Would I say that was a horror film?
No, not really.
No, because it doesn't induce fear or panic as such.
No.
It's just a good... What would you call those?
I don't know.
It's not a horror.
Don't know.
It's not a psychological thriller.
There is an aspect of psychological thriller in that, I would say.
Okay. I feel like we need to come up with a genre for... We'll have to name that ourselves.
Okay.
Okay. Now, I've got a section called Monster Movies.
Okay.
In there, I had Alien, which we've already spoken about.
Yep.
Maybe not really a monster movie. But another one in there is Jaws.
Oh.
Now, and it's... A lot of these I've put in almost as questions. Sort of like, is that a horror movie? I think it is.
Yeah, I think you can say Jaws is a horror film.
Okay.
Suspense, thriller sort of thing, but I think Jaws is a horror movie.
Because there is also a big giant shark that's...
I went
Eating
to
people.
Florida and went on the Jaws ride when I was still in my terrified of horror movies phase. And that was very scary.
Was it you that was telling me that that's no longer running?
I believe it is not.
I watched a video on Facebook and it was like the final ride
Yeah.
on
I don't think it's there
the
anymore.
Jaws, yeah. Because I have also been on it.
Which is a shame.
It is, but at
I
least
just
we
suppose
got to
people
enjoy
these
it.
days don't
They don't
know.
relate with Jaws.
No.
You think you're talking about a movie that's nearly, 40 years old or something?
Oh, I'm sure. If not,
I don't know when it came out, particularly.
I think that one's the 70s, isn't it?
Yeah, probably is.
78 or
77?
something.
Not sure. But yeah.
I'd seen that thing when we drove past the Barbican, saying that you could go and watch the movie with a live orchestra.
live orchestra,
and I'm
yeah,
like
the
proper
symphony.
excited about it. I was like, that'd be amazing.
Just to hear that dun dun. Dun 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 dun.
Jaws, 1975.
Wow.
I know.
Even before we was thinking. I was trying to think. I never progressed in my list in this section. But I was like, there must be others that fall into this category. Big monster movies.
Monster movies.
King Kong.
Yeah.
Is that a horror?
I'm not sure if that vaguely falls into the Hammer horror.
I suppose from the
Area.
1920s sort of original. I suppose it would have been scarier to them then than us seeing it now.
Yeah.
And what I was thinking, like, it half crossed my mind, but like, what's he called? Godzilla.
Godzilla. Or Gojira.
Gojira.
Gojira. Godzilla.
That doesn't really address it.
Godzilla's a monster movie.
Is it also a horror movie?
No, I think you just say it's a monster movie. You think about the original Godzilla films and all the men in the rubber suits and things. It's just a monster movie.
So you're saying monster movie is a different genre to
Yeah,
a horror movie?
definitely.
Okay. But Aliens is a horror movie. Alien
Alien is closer to being a horror film
than a monster film.
than a monster movie, I think.
Is it a sci-fi film?
Yeah, because it's set in space. What?
Well, which genre does it fall into then?
Sci-fi horror monster movie.
Sci-fi horror.
Psychological thriller monster movie.
Monsterfy.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's move on.
Let's
move past that. Okay. So I've got a few classics to cover. Psycho.
Ooh.
Not scary. I do think it's got an element of suspense.
Psychological thriller.
Psychological thriller.
Suspense horror.
Is that a new genre?
I'm just thinking I've invented a new genre.
Suspense horror.
Suspense horror.
Yes.
I'm patent pending on that one. TM it. Whatever.
Okay. And that's one of those that if you'd have watched it in its time, it would have been a horror.
Yeah.
Watching it now,
Not so much.
the premise is still
Yeah.
scary, but
Still got the scary sort of.
it's the sort of delivery of it with its
Yeah.
graphics and things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah.
Horror movie.
Yeah.
That's got to be up there. Original. None of this remake. None of this Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Nothing like that. We're talking Texas Chainsaw Massacre original movie is a horror film.
Yes.
And the inspiration for so many films
Yep.
after it. House of a Thousand Corpses.
Ooh.
Basically Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake.
Yep. I didn't even consider that in the list of top favourite horror movies. Not so much that one, but Devil's Rejects.
Devil's Rejects. Fantastic movie. Rob Zombie is currently making the third one.
Yes.
Right now.
Yep.
3 from Hell. Boom.
Is that what it's called?
I believe so. I'm sure it'll be absolutely terrible. As Mr. Zombie's struggling with his movie making at the moment.
It depends if that one's the same family.
Yeah.
I think he's done okay with that family.
The Firefly.
On that.
He has done right. You know, Devil's Rejects is a fantastic film. It's a great horror movie.
Yeah.
Type thing. House of a Thousand Corpses, I'd like to see the original version of it, because the version that you actually end up watching is just a really condensed, cut down version. But the original version is like 3.5 hours long.
Oh, wow. Okay. Which people consider too long for a movie, but
yeah,
when it's something that you're sort of invested in, then maybe you need to see it in its full glory.
Dr. Satan!
And as you say, that's sort of been going back to Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Sorry, it's opened up an avenue for a number of films.
Yeah, it was a not quite a trendsetter, but that sort of thing. It just opened the door for so many films of its kind.
Yeah, like a couple that I've seen is Wrong Turn.
Yeah.
And one of it almost made it onto the top 3.
Hills Have Eyes.
The Hills Have Eyes, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
See, there's one where part of me could enter into an argument that the remake of The Hills Have Eyes could rival the original.
Oh, okay.
I thought the remake of The Hills Have Eyes was... There are some really uncomfortable scenes in that film.
I've only seen the remake, so...
Really
that is what
uncomfortable scenes.
Yeah, it's quite unpleasant. And I think what makes those films worse...
The realism.
Is the idea that
the possibility that it could be real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It made me think, what was that... like a more original of its kind with the banjos.
Deliverance.
Yes. Yeah, was that not sort of one of those early films?
Yeah. Yeah.
The idea that...
I think Burt Reynolds might have had his original hair in that film.
Did he have original hair?
At some point in time he probably did.
I don't know, it's not a film I've seen. I'm not sure that I could bring myself to watch something like that. The oldies are a little bit... almost too graphic.
Yeah.
Because things were so different
there were
from their
less
time.
Sort of constraints back in those days.
Yeah. Okay, moving on from there. One that I feel that you might have wanted to touch on, which I think will come in your top 3.
Okay.
Do you know where I'm going with this?
No.
Evil Dead.
So, which? The original Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness, or the Evil Dead remake?
Let's start at the beginning.
Evil Dead.
Evil Dead, the original.
Okay. Low budget movie.
It's a classic.
Critical acclaim.
Yeah.
It is a classic. It was fantastic though. Dead by Dawn, Dead by Dawn.
Is that... Oh, I don't know if I'm thinking of Evil Dead 2 with the woman that just gets like her head chopped off with a spade.
In the first 3 minutes of the movie.
Of the second one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like his girlfriend's dead by but basically what would have been the opening credits. He's killed his girlfriend. Yeah.
It's just... As you say, it's low budget. It looks it, but...
But... They revolutionised some tricks in that film. Like they invented stuff. Ramcam.
Yeah.
Ramcam was genius. How do you get a camera to go through a window? Just put a pole on the end that smashes the window first. Stuff like that. Yeah.
And records it first hand.
Ted Raimi in that massive suit.
What suit?
The old woman's suit. In the
basement.
Trapdoor, slamming the...
It's truly terrifying, and that laugh.
The one thing in... I think it's the first one that proper... with the pencil in the ankle. Spoiler, by the way.
Yeah.
You know, that film's been out quite a while.
If you haven't seen it, you probably never.
So you have touched on something. My number 2 horror film.
Yeah.
For pure terrified was the remake of Evil Dead. I've only been able to watch that film once because it proper shit me up, did that film.
For what reason?
Oh, there was, I remember there's like a bit in the bathroom and the suspense, and it proper put me on edge. Did that film?
I don't really remember it.
I think there was too much suspense and then horror.
Too stressed out.
It was just too much for my tiny little mind to take. But yeah, I mean, Evil Dead 1, the original... Evil Dead 2 had that. They were starting to head towards the comedy. There was that element, the story being is that they showed Evil Dead 2 in the cinemas and people were laughing rather than being scared of it.
Yeah.
Which then led on to Army of
The
Darkness,
third one.
which is just a fantastic movie, but it's truly almost the true definition of a comedy movie.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, Evil Dead, the remake of Evil Dead, if you haven't seen the remake of Evil Dead, don't, because it's really scary.
We should probably add that to our
Oh, no, I don't
rewatch list.
I can.
No?
G's done that tattoo of that picture from Evil Dead.
Of what?
The person that's like razor blade on the face and stuff. Yeah, so good tattoo, but whew,
Ooh, okay.
yeah, creepy.
Okie dokie.
So far, we've done my top horror movie.
Your top 2? Okay. Yeah, I've not really touched on mine.
Are you trying to create suspense? Is it going to be like...
I don't think it's being very suspenseful. There's just, I almost wanted us to have the conversation to make sure that the things I'd identified as being my top horror films did fall into the category. Because I was worried that 1 or 2 of them may be too psychological thriller. But I think on the basis we're working with the definition we found, builds up suspense and fear, then they still fit the category. Okay. 1, 2...
3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3.
2 more films that sort of are well up there. One is a classic, The Shining.
Oof. I saw a little video a couple of nights ago of Jack Nicholson preparing for the axe scene and him like jumping around the room and stuff and like mentally preparing himself to do that.
Getting
scene.
himself all sweaty and
I
sort of
think I've said to
dishevelled.
you that I'm pretty sure that they went through something like 300 doors.
That's just crazy.
Because they wanted him to be exhausted. They didn't want him to get through it in the first swing, and they wanted him to really struggle to get through the door. And
Why did they have to use 300 doors, though? Why didn't they just have, like, a tree? Something they could have kept swinging an axe into?
Because they weren't telling him that's what they were doing. They were just saying, right,
just
go
like,
again, do it again, go again, do it again. Oh, we didn't quite get it, do it again. I don't know. I might have made that up.
Well,
or somebody who told me might have made it up.
There's a couple of scenes in that, though, sort of... I mean, it's definitely a horror film.
Yeah, it is. There's some proper creepy stuff in that film.
There's just a couple of sort of iconic scenes that everyone can relate to.
The bit where he goes around the corner and the 2 girls are stood in the hallway.
Yeah.
Spoilers, by the way.
Yeah, and even the blood.
The blood elevator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And things that you just... It's that
Little
not knowing...
Pig, little pig! Let me in!
Yeah, because that's not scary at all.
No?
No, he'd just be in like a ball on the floor, just sort of like crying and screaming.
Yeah, she pretty much was.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
He would be. I think what makes it worse is the fact that it was her husband as well.
Yeah.
Because you'd be
But
like,
what did
hoping he was
what
joking.
did come off the back of that was a great episode of The Simpsons.
just one though.
The Hammer, not Hammer, the Treehouse of Horror one where they recreate The Shining. He's like, all work and no play makes Homer something. Go crazy? Don't mind if I do!
Brilliant.
Yeah, The Shining, way up there.
Yeah.
Such a movie.
Another good Jack Nicholson. He's kind of scary when he has that maniacal look. Okay, and the other one, because I said there was two that almost made it up there. The other one was kind of, although it's more recent, it's kind of a classic in the way that I think it did something a little bit different and set up the future for more films to come, but it's Scream.
Yeah. Although it won't be that recent now.
90s?
Film came out in the 90s.
Yeah.
So it's quite old now.
I guess I still consider that quite recent, but yeah.
Yeah, it's not, I'm afraid.
No, not really.
No.
But the idea, I guess the idea of having your face covered as a killer was already out there.
So Scream launched the genre of what then became teen horror movies.
Yes.
And there was a lot of them.
Yeah.
And there has been a lot of them.
And never quite to the same sort of level of impact that Scream had.
Here's one for you. And I don't know, because now I'm going, am I going to ruin something here? I've just thought of a film. And I wonder if it's on your list.
Okay.
So, here's a film that I thought was quite good. And one of the reasons I thought it was quite good was because it was a horror film that didn't have a happy ending.
Do horror films have happy endings?
There's usually one person that gets away at the end.
Okay.
Even if...
All the friends are dead, but at least they escaped. So
they
that
got away.
That
like
makes
the
it
main
happy.
character gets away, sort of thing. Jeepers Creepers.
I don't connect with that film.
I didn't mind that movie, and it doesn't have a happy ending. They're all dead at the end.
Okay. I
They
don't know
all
if
die.
I even know really what happens. He flies, doesn't he? Or
Yeah,
something?
he can fly. He's like part bat. I think.
You saying that, though, it's made me think of a film that I've not touched on at all, but it was another enjoyable one, and slightly different genre. But the one that was like half true story from the Australian outback.
That
Wolf Creek.
Wolf Creek.
Yeah. Yeah. Stuff. Is that... Yeah, it's horror. Horror survival.
Horror-esque.
Sort of thing. Yeah. But yeah, Jeepers Creepers isn't one that I'm familiar with, to be quite honest.
Okay.
No, it doesn't. You've not ruined nothing.
Okay, I haven't ruined anything.
No, you have not. Okay, right.
Okay, right.
That's covered the classics. I had Nightmare on Elm Street on there, but we already touched on them.
Mm-hmm.
And Halloween.
Okay. On one of my old phones, I think it was my Nokia 3210, my sister's ringtone was the Halloween theme music.
So you'd be scared when she rang. Okay.
No, it was just I don't know why. There was some reason that I associated that theme tune with her. I don't know. I think it might have just been because I had so many different theme tunes on my phone, and I needed to assign like all the people that actually phoned me a different one, and hers just happened to be the Halloween theme tune.
No reflection on
So if I randomly heard that song now, I'd be like, "Oh, Laura."
What is it? Music is like one of your top senses to
memory.
induce memory. Yeah.
Music.
like smell.
Yeah.
They can't remember smell. You want me to move on? So, next. The Babadook. This is a film that's sort of within the top 10 for me because of its actual scare factor. This film really stayed with me. Just because it's basically a black sort of shadow moving around the film. But it just had a horrible, creepy voice that went with it. And actually frightened me. So it stayed with me.
Okay.
You've not seen it, I don't think.
I haven't seen it, but no. I've heard a lot of people talk about that film as being up there as like a good horror movie.
Yep. Okay. So, into the final sort of 5 films for me. These 2, I wasn't sure whether you'd qualify them as horror. But they are Misery.
I would send that off down the psychological thriller route.
I would too.
Not so much of a horror movie.
But it's that suspense factor.
But it is terrifying.
Yeah.
She's both fantastic and terrifying in that film.
Yep. It's that element of him, without wanting to spoil anything, but when he's trying to escape and you sort of gene him on because you want him to move quicker in order to get out before she returns home, sort of thing. But there's bits where he knocks things over on the table and you want him to put it back. But it's just that panic factor that you've got for him because you want him to... It builds suspense.
Yeah.
So that's why I do think it qualifies as being a horror. Next is Silence of the Lambs.
Oof. Movie.
Horror movie?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so. I think that probably does fall into the horror movie genre.
I mean, you're talking about serial killers.
Pretty sure that's an Oscar winner. Silence of the Lambs. I think that won a Oscar, possibly.
The actual film did? No, not one of the actresses. I think she...
Anthony Hopkins.
I thought she
Jodie
won.
Foster, maybe.
Yeah, like maybe supporting. I mean, she'd have been the lead actress. But yeah, not scary as such, but it's that possibility of it being real and the fact that he could just switch between being quite gentlemanly almost to then sort of what he does to the prison guard when he escapes from that facility.
So, it won 5 Oscars.
Okay, so definitely Oscar worthy.
Best Picture.
Yep.
Which I had a feeling Anthony Hopkins, Best Actor in a Leading Role. Jodie Foster, Best Actress in a Leading Role.
Yep.
Best Director. Best Writing, Screenplay based on material previously produced or published. Best Sound. And Best Film Editing.
Yeah.
It won another 54 awards.
Wow.
Did that film?
Is that?
You want me to do one of my impressions?
I was wondering if that could have been my horror impression, but I'm not sure I can do it.
Do what?
The lotion.
I'll try, and then you can take it off your list.
I'm not. I don't. No, I don't think I want to try.
Go on.
Live.
Go on.
No.
Oh.
I psych myself up to it. I feel like I'm just about to do it, and then I can't.
You tried to jump the shark and then failed. Do you want me to try
I don't even know what that means. Yeah.
It puts the lotion into the basket, otherwise it gets the hose again.
that went.
I was laughing too.
that went off the rails. You sounded a little bit.
Put the lotion in the basket. Put the lotion in the fucking basket.
Oh, that was okay.
Put the lotion in the fucking basket.
Okay. Right. We've touched on that. Actually, one of the scariest bits about that film is towards the back end where he's got the night vision goggles.
The night vision goggles bit is terrifying.
Yeah, that is truly.
Any element of pitch darkness is truly terrifying.
Yeah. And just considering what we've sort of seen him do up to that point, you just wouldn't want to encounter him in the dark. Anyway. That just reminded me of one of your favourite scenes from that film. Yeah, just... It scares you. Right, so... My third favourite film.
Here we go.
Yeah. I think you're going to find it a little bit controversial because you're going to disagree. Probably with the fact that it's a horror film to start with, and you're then going to say that it's a very poor film.
A Muppets Christmas Carol.
No, not that. The Blair Witch Project. The original. I was borderline obsessive with this film. It came out while I was still at school. I think I was like 16. And I believed it to be true. Was it maybe the first of its kind that was like a documentary style film?
I mean, to be fair, there was a massive thing around that film. Those three people had to go into hiding to keep up the pretense that that film was real.
Right.
And I think it was for like years. I'm not even joking. I think they had to like stay hidden for years because it was still this was it real, was it not thing. And
I believed it was real. So I was like researching it.
threw that goddamn map away.
Was that another impression?
Not really. It was just like a...
Yeah, it's when they've been wandering around the forest for like 3 days.
Spoilers.
Following a map that had been thrown in the river. But that really scared me, the idea of it being true. And when I was like, come out of the cinema and started looking up the actual stories that they portray in the film online, and you find that they seem to relate to real happenings.
Yeah, but nothing happens in that film other than the last 30 seconds.
No, it is that suspense, that build-up, and maybe it is just psychological again, so it doesn't count as a horror film. But yeah, the last 30 seconds
happens in that film.
The last 30 seconds of that film pulls it all together. Everything that was sort of reported throughout is then shown at the end,
but
and
it
seeing
doesn't pull it together enough.
It does for me. It still scares me
and
now.
This is it. This is your top 3 films. It's not my top 3 films. I've done my top 3, 5, whatever.
Yeah.
So go for gold. It's just for me. It wouldn't even register that film.
But it's just the last bit where they're running around that derelict building.
Horrors.
Yes, there's a lot of spoilers. I have to be able to talk about it. The cameras, you're seeing like dirty little children handprints all over the walls, and it makes you realise that this is where those children were taken, and like the children that were kidnapped. And then someone gets like clocked on the head or something, doesn't they? And they fall on the floor, and then as the camera falls, you see one of the other missing... Oh, it's making me feel a little bit sick, and I think I'm going to start crying.
Steady on.
Okay. It actually made me feel weird.
Do you want me to do my Silence Limes impression again?
You make me laugh. Yeah, come on. Is it any better?
Because now I'm laughing, and we know laughing doesn't help that impression.
Okay.
Put it in the basket.
And then, yeah, just one of the other missing people is stood in the corner of that room with their back to it. Yeah. Okay.
We used to recreate it in the basement at work.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No, it's giving me goosebumps. I'm about to pull my sleeves down. Okay. You ready to move on?
I am ready.
Right. Number 2.
Here it is, number 2.
Which I'm kind of surprised that you haven't brought into the conversation.
Okay.
American Psycho.
There's a reason why I haven't brought it into the conversation. Because it's nowhere near being a horror movie.
It is.
There is nothing about that film that makes it a horror movie.
All the people dying. All the blood.
Nobody dies in that film.
Spoiler.
No, that's the opposite of a spoiler. Nobody dies in that film.
But they do.
No.
You see them die in the film. Yeah, you do.
No.
That is what the film is about.
It's not a horror film.
It is.
No.
Yeah.
No.
What is it?
Psychological thriller.
No. Absolutely not a psychological thriller.
100% psychological thriller.
No. It doesn't
Not a
induce
horror.
fear.
It's not a horror film.
It is.
Don't get me wrong. Great movie.
The gore aspect.
A number of times I've referenced that film in the last few weeks. I do feel that's potentially why that's on your list. Because I just keep
Because you keep bringing it up.
Yeah. That's Sicilian rail. Yeah, that colour, that's bone.
The bit
What's
that
wrong, Patrick?
stood out for me
I've returned some videotapes.
is where, is it Paul? Where he's sat on the chair and he's like,
Why is all the newspaper down? You got a little poochie, you got a little dog, a little poochie.
where he's like,
No, Paul!
is that a raincoat?
Yes, Paul, it is!
Yeah. Okay. Moving past it. There is an unpleasant smell.
It's a studio.
Studio. Okay, so the grand finale.
Can't wait for this.
You think it's not going to be a horror film?
It's not going to be a horror film. It's going to be the Lego movie.
Oh my god, no. That wouldn't make it into the top 20 of anything.
Wow, you love that film.
Top 20 worst films I've ever seen.
Wow!
Did you have a view as to what my top 3?
A View to a Kill. Down, 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 down. What your number 1 horror movie?
Oh, my top 3. Any of them would have been. Because I was really worried about missing something that I would then suddenly realise.
What was number 3?
Blair Witch.
Yeah, this top 3 is not going well. I feel this podcast has been like the Blair Witch, in that there's been a hell of a lot of suspense all the way through it, but ultimately nothing's happened. Because,
Wow.
yeah, number 3 not living, number 2 is not horror film, so number 1 should be amazing.
That wasn't the question though, was it?
What was the question?
Did you have a view as to what my top films might include?
No, I thought you were going to have that Babadook film as number 3.
I've only seen it once.
Surprised From Dusk Till Dawn hasn't come up yet. Is that number 1?
We already had a conversation about whether it was a horror film or not.
Is it?
But you said it wasn't even a vampire movie, it was an action movie.
It's an action movie. Vampire movie. Action vampire movie.
With a touch of horror.
No horror in it. It's not scary.
It isn't scary.
No, it's not.
It doesn't have a lot of tension either. A little bit, I suppose, at the beginning. With the kidnapped people. But anyway. We divulge. Okay, so number 1. Favourite horror film? The Exorcist.
Really?
Yes.
So, I'm going to tell you a story right now. I'm going to tell you another story. So, I think it was it last Halloween or Halloween before last? Halloween before last, we decided to watch The Exorcist. And I really didn't want to watch it. and we sat down and we watched The Exorcist, and it was worse than I remembered it being. And the reason I didn't want to watch it was because I knew that The Exorcist is not a very good film. It's not a very good horror film. It's certainly not a very good film overall. And it is painful to watch. And when we finished watching that film, I said to you, I can safely say that I never need to see that film again.
Yep.
And I will probably never watch that film again.
Yep.
So, why have you picked The Exorcist?
Because that is... It's everything you need from a horror movie. For me.
Nothing. You know what it should have had in it?
What?
Your father's in here with us. Your mother's in here with us, Father. Do you want to leave a message? Yes I do. Mom, get out of here, I'm working. Spoil sport.
It's just a classic.
Repossessed is a better film. Hello, operator. I'm being sent back to hell by rock and roll.
I've not seen it.
You should. It's great.
It's just of its time. You think when that film was made? It's about possession.
Does nothing for
me. The scariest bit for me is where she runs down the stairs.
Crab walk,
yeah.
Yeah.
I think part of the problem we had when we watched it more recently was it was like was it the remastered version or something, and it has some overlays over the original footage. Like there's a bit where the devil's face just appears on the screen.
Yeah.
And it I don't know, it lost a little bit, I think, with that. But it's the music, it's the 70s feel to the atmospherics. And I first saw that film at the cinema when it was re-released. I think I was sort of 14, 15. I didn't really know what to expect other than knowing that it'd been banned prior to that. And
I imagine at that point in time it probably won't have had the crab walk in it because that was removed in that version of that film because that was deemed to be too scary.
Yeah. And I think when I went to the cinema to see it, I left the cinema with a migraine. And sort of like that younger age because all the way through it I was just really tense, not knowing what.
Isn't it an 18?
Don't know. Yeah.
Sometimes wonder how you managed to see it at the cinema at 14.
I don't know, I'm guessing. It might have been later than that. I went with my mum and Andy to watch it, and I just left like almost terrified because that is sort of like the ghost aspect for me. It's stuff that is a lot closer to being possible. So that's why. For me, it has a little story. I remember the first time I saw it.
I think that is a lot about it. I think that there is an element of you could watch something that might not be regarded as scary, but it could hit you in a particular way and to you be terrifying.
Yeah.
You know, if you've had an experience in your life where somebody's been possessed, then maybe that's why.
Yeah, I can relate. No, but the fact that I can remember when I saw it and the surroundings for that, and I may not consider it to be the best film, but it stayed with me. So that is why it makes it as my top horror film.
So there we go. Your top 3 horror movies.
Yep.
Which genre are we going to do on the next Lianne at the Movies?
I don't know. I'm not sure that I could talk enough about another genre.
No? You'll have to start doing like snippets. Like half-hour podcasts.
We did touch on another subject which I think I could is of an equal passion to me. I don't enjoy horror films as much. Well, that's not scary at all. There's somebody just knocking on the living room door. Timing. I don't enjoy horror films as much anymore because I don't like to be scared. So I don't watch them as much anymore, but I could potentially talk about fantasy type films.
Fantasy.
Yeah.
Willow.
Yes. An absolute classic.
So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. Look out for the next instalment of Lianne at the Movies, Fantasy. And we'll find out
Coming to a podcast
coming to
near
a
you.
podcast near you. This podcast. We'll find out what your top 3 fantasy movies are.
Better start doing my preparation.
Yeah, can you do some better preparation for the next one?
Wow. I put a lot of effort into trying to...
You did, and you were really excited. I feel it was a little misplaced, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I do as well, the way that you shot down everything that I said.
I'm just,
I'm not coming back here.
No? You're not coming back on the podcast?
No.
Okay. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. That's Lianne at the Movies. Top 3 horror films. See what you think. Do you agree? Do you have a better choice? Mm-hmm. Oh, she's sulking now.
Me?
Right.
Do I have a better choice?
No, I'm asking the podcast people
Well,
if they have a better choice.
Yeah, okay. That's fair enough.
They could let you know. They could contact you. And they could say, I think he was really harsh. I agree with you.
I've just seen a movie on the shelf that... It doesn't matter.
Okay. And on
Wrap
that
it
note, we'll leave it there.
Over and out.
Right, cheers for that. Bye-bye. So there you go. What do you think? Cookiecast podcast special number 1 in the bag. Lianne Davies giving us her horror movie rundown. What do you think? Do you think I was a little too hard on her? I'm not sure. I had to go back and listen to it again, and I don't know. Maybe I was a little too hard on her choices. But normally I'd give a rundown of all the different ways that you can contact us, but I'm trying to push the website more, because the website's got all of the contact information on, and even a little form for you to be able to email us. So get yourself over to thecookiecast.com and start sending us media stuff. Tell us what you're liking, tell us what you're not liking, tell us what you'd like to see more or less of. Tell us what you think to the theme tune. Is it something that I should keep, or should I look for a new one? Like I say, I'll put the information for the theme tune up. So yeah, tune into our next episode of Cookiecast to see what we've got going on there. Got another guest coming up. And then tune back in later on to see what other podcast specials we've got. So yeah, until next time, bye-bye.